Hi, James. Can you hear us? Can you hear us? Can you hear us? Is he muted? No, he doesn't have,
We need to text him.
He doesn't look like he's talking.
he doesn't really have that great of, bandwidth. Can you hear us? He's like, it's like one frame at a time. Let me, oh. Jeez. Can you us?
Texting him too.
I don't have any chat features in this. Okay. So 1, 2, 3. So we need one more for a quorum.
I just texted him as well.
So James, your bandwidth is really slow. And you haven't said anything to us? Can you hear us?
We can't hear you.
We can't hear you.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, good.
All right. And so we're waiting for one more member to have a quorum.
Okay.
It's 6:05. I did not, let's see,
Who do we have in the room?
we have Brad Stewart and Kirsten Silver.
Okay.
And we also have members of the public, Jody Carson and
Jim.
Jim Knapp.
Hey. Hi, Jim. Hi, Jody.
James.
Hi, James. I did not hear from John Steele, but I thought I heard from Sherry DeVos, and I thought she was come.
Okay. I just got a text from Sherry that says, "Can you tell her I'm on the phone, but it won't let me unmute?"
Oh. Did that help? Whoever,
Hello. Can you hear me now?
yeah, who's this?
This is Sherry.
Okay, great, Sherry. Okay. So,
Yeah,
James,
I think you automatically mute, and then I'm not able to do that when I call in for some reason.
okay, well, we promoted you to panelist, so you should be able to talk and participate.
You have mute panelists at the bottom, so maybe you need to click unmute panelists.
No. No, that's
Great. I'm sorry, I couldn't, none of the passwords would work for me either, so this is the best they could do. But I'm here.
Okay, so, can everyone hear us? James, you can hear us?
Yes.
Sherry, you can hear us?
Yes,
Okay. So we are recording and we're live streaming right now. So why don't we get started with opening the meeting?
Okay. So number one item is call to order and roll call.
Okay, Brad Stewart. Here.
Here, I'm sorry. I thought I would call the meeting order.
I couldn't understand him either.
Oh.
Roll call?
We're doing
Is that
roll
what
call,
we're doing?
yeah.
Yes, Kirsten Silver here.
Sherry, you gonna go?
yes, here.
Okay. And James Manning.
Here.
Okay, we have a quorum of 4 members. We're missing Dan Salty, Michael Fuller, and John Steele.
Let's do it. Okay. All right, so the second item on the agenda is public comment related to items not on the agenda.
Okay, we have some people we have here. Go ahead, Jim.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Do I remember right, this may be your second stint on the HRB, James?
Yes, sir. I think I've got 6 years on it so far.
Well, I'm Jim Mattis, and I live at 17565 Menard Street, apartment 302 at Mary's Woods. Been there for about 5 years, but before that, we lived here in West Linn for over 20 years, and our children and grandsons continue to live here. So I still find myself with more affinity to West Linn than I do with Lake Oswego. I was I'm the immediate past president of the Advocates for Willamette Falls, board member. And I'm also the immediate past president of the Willamette Falls and Land Use Heritage Area Coalition, third board member and founder of that nonprofit as well. I was co-chair of this board when it began some years back. And still enjoy those times. I know it's a demanding time on you, as it is for all volunteers, and I thank you very much for your services. But I wanted to express my view, at least, that I at the time and still do see the HRB as the city's key for keeping the city's historic sites, structures, and districts in the public eye, and being a promoter of historic preservation. And of course, that goes beyond your quasi-judicial responsibilities for taking care of the different pieces of the code, which of course is also a necessary attribute of what the board needs to do. But always in my mind, it was the promotion of the city's history and what it can continue to have and for people to enjoy was the more joyful piece of what the board could be all about. And we would do different things in terms of trying to promote that. I look forward to your draft mission statement and seeing how that is evolving in terms of perhaps hoping to be proactive in some of that area beyond what you are doing now. It used to be, at least back in the days when I was there, we would get updates from some of the nonprofits, such as the Advocates and the Coalition, on what they're doing. Now, of course, we have the Locks Authority, which is, we're not too many years away from getting those iconic Civil War locks reopened and connect our river and doing all sorts of things that can do. And that, of course, is a historic structure that's been on the National Register for decades at this point. I don't think there's very much, I don't think there's any other area that could be as promotive of the city in terms of economic development, in terms of being able to reuse structures that are already in place that probably in all likelihood will are on Moore's Island, which was created, of course, when the locks were open. Then to focus, for one thing, by the board for promoting what the city itself is trying to do with its cultural heritage district, which is over that island and what can take place there. You know, that in terms of historic preservation of structures, reuse of structures, there's not very much that people enjoy beyond very new things than being able to go back to a structure that has been repurposed and reused for another purpose. And there's all kinds of visions that can go on that island. But that's one that I would think, you know, the board could promote in terms of the different activities that it could be involved in. So I guess that's my main message, is to say, I hope the board, you know, does see that it has a huge role in terms of helping the citizens of West Linn know what its history is. And that area, the beginning of the city was. And there's so much there for people to enjoy once we could get that redeveloped, both in terms of economic development and historic preservation. So that's my main pitch.
Thank you.
Hi there, and I'm Jody Carson, and I'm a former city councilor, but I'm also on the board of the Advocates for Willamette Falls Heritage, on the board of Willamette Falls and Landings Heritage Area Coalition, and on the historic Willamette Main Street Board. And I have been actively engaged in trying to, you know, really preserve and interpret the history of our area ever since I moved to this area back in 91. I live in West Linn, and I lived in the historic district and have been very involved in that process over the years in terms of looking at the code and trying to keep it current. But one of the things, there's two things I really want to emphasize. First, I think that the Historic Review Board has a role in really getting things into not just your mission, but looking at how this fits into the city and making sure that other city documents and plans and codes reflect a desire to preserve the heritage in West Linn in terms of making sure those things are identified, and if need be, some design elements incorporated into the code so that when things come up, like the things that Jim mentioned on Moore's Island, if there's going to be a repurposing, there's some direction in terms of how we would want to see those things interpreted and preserved. One of the things that's key is to make sure you have a current inventory. I was one of the main people who pushed to become a certified local government. And you get a grant every year for funds to do something with. One of the things I would like you to see you think about doing with that grant is to update the historic inventory. When it was originally done back in the 80s and then refreshed in the 90s, I don't remember exactly when the second refresh, it was still primarily focused on residential structures. It first came about, you know, focusing on the homes in the Willamette area, but there's homes in the Bolton area, there's actually homes now in Robinwood area that would all qualify to be listed on the inventory, because they were focused at things, houses at the turn of the century, not this last century, but 1900 century, from basically late 1800s to early 1900s. A lot of things were not included on the historic inventory. Bungalows, for example, and now mid-century modern houses are also something that would be eligible to be listed on the historic inventory for West Linn. One of the things that's sort of a whole is also our industrial and retail and commercial buildings that should be incorporated into that document. There are some buildings in Willamette who qualify, but also a lot of the buildings down on Moore Island. I don't know if you're aware, there's a process called the 106 process that goes on when there's been federal money invested in an area. And if that area then is going to change in its purpose, both for the locks and for the Mill A on Moore's Island. And as part of that planning process, those entities are required to do something with the historic properties. I'm not sure which of the buildings down there are listed on the city's inventory. I know that they have been listed in a document that the PGE had to do years ago. I think there was 13 buildings down there in that surrounding area that are listed in their inventory that was identified as eligible for National Register nomination. We talked at one point about having that be an industrial heritage site. Now it's listed in the new plans as a heritage site. So I think one of the key steps in this, trying to get things sort of more front and center, is to actually update the inventory. So that when something happens, you can go, oh, that's property we should look at. I mean, there's little nooks and there's a neighborhood in Bolton that should have Rose Court. I forget the name of that little street, but there's a couple of places that could be also included in the inventory that is really important. So I'm just really wanting you to take that more active role and identifying those properties and figuring out ways to help maintain them and make sure that future generations can really appreciate the rich heritage we have in this area.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jody and Jim. Very good points. As you know or might not know, I'm the chair of the Waterfront board also, and we discussed these items at our last meeting of resources that are on Moore's Island. So I think looking at it from both groups is a good way to go. Like you said, Jody, so we don't forget about them.
Thank you. I didn't catch you, the chair of something. I didn't catch it.
What was your, what are you the chair of again? Can you say that again, James?
The waterfront, the Westland waterfront redevelopment.
Oh,
Working group, yes.
okay.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Great.
Okay,
I don't know how much you caught, sorry, but we are looking at those issues down on Moore's Island, the inventory of the buildings that PGE owns and what eventually could happen with those buildings if and when the mill, finally closes.
okay, these comments will probably play into our discussion later in the agenda, so maybe we want to just move on to agenda item 3, and then we can incorporate some of those comments they made at the public comment period.
Okay, so I need approval of the draft meeting notes for August 20th and October 3rd.
I second that approval. I approve.
I think that Sherry is offering to move that we approve them. Is there a second?
Second.
Brad Stewart seconds.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any nays? All right, the minutes pass. Okay. So, James, the next item?
Number 4 is vote to elect the vice chair.
Is there anyone that's interested in the position?
It's power. Come on, guys.
Sherry, we can't make eye contact with you, so you'll have to speak up if you're interested.
I had suggested John Steele, just because he, like James, has lived here all his life and knows a lot about the history, but
He's not here, so we can't elect him.
Yeah. That fits into the category of volunteer.
right.
Oh, well, there he is. He must have heard you say that.
I conjured him.
Yeah.
Yes, it's arrived. Perfect timing.
Looks like he's muted.
You can You can thank my lovely wife for that.
Okay. John, your name was forwarded as someone to be the vice chair.
Well, I don't know. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we hear you.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, probably nobody is more acquainted with Vice than me, so. And, okay, thank you.
Okay, so are you willing to serve as vice chair? I hear that as a yes.
Yes, yes.
Okay, do we
As long
have,
as James is never gone, yeah.
All right, so I'll make the motion to have John Steele as vice chair.
I second.
All in favor?
Favor and aye.
Aye.
Favor? Aye.
and John, are you abstaining or are you voting?
I'm abstaining.
Okay, all right. So we selected you, John, as vice chair. Congratulations. Yay.
Thank you all very much.
Thank you. All right, item 5 is the discussion of the draft mission statement.
Okay, that's my cue. So, as you know, John Floyd left to go to Gresham, and I have been appointed as the staff liaison, which is good because I've been part of this group, but I've also needed to get a little up to speed on what John was doing with his what he's been working with you. I haven't been fully engaged on that before. So I had to take a step back and do some research and kind of figure out how we got to where we're at with the mission, with the lack of a mission statement in the existing code. And so I want to go through the background a little bit. In 2000, and I'm glad that Jody's here because she's going to help give us some perspective. But back in 2007, the city became a certified local government, certified local government, which is a classification given by the state SHPO to West Linn to implement the historic preservation code, and the National Register, and the National Park Historic Preservation Act, which is a federal act. And in it, the city has responsibilities and the Historic Commission has duties. And we passed an ordinance in 2006, ordinance 1537, that defined the duties of the HRB. And it was listed in the code as there were, it looks like 10 responsibilities, and it was to disseminate information, act as a coordinator for local groups, advise interest groups, monitor the historic inventories, research recommended properties, coordinate with Clackamas County because they were our quasi judicial board at that time, and work on providing an adequate permanent facility for Westland historic artifacts and materials. So those were the duties in 2006 when we were approved as a CLG. And this 1537, the ordinance was incorporated in our agreement, which has not been amended since 2007. However, in 2014, there was an effort to streamline all the citizen group roles and responsibilities. Up to then, there were varying terms, varying numbers of people on the boards, varying duties. And the city council at that time decided to make all the boards the same size, with the same terms, 4-year terms, and also streamline the procedures. And then one of the things they did was they removed all the duties of all the CAGs at the time and replaced it with a statement of, they purposely removed the duties and changed it to an approach that's not well suited for the HRB. But it was to, community groups shall have special projects in the subject area of their group. And the city council should provide direction and a work plan to the advisory group. So that is why you don't have a mission or a purpose, because they took it away in 2014. Because at that time they felt it would streamline the process. I don't think that was a really great approach for the HRB because you have specific requirements that you have to perform as a CLG, and you're also a quasi-judicial board. The quasi-judicial board was, your responsibilities were incorporated into Chapter 25, and Chapter 99 of the Development Code that basically says that you get to do design review and all your quasi-judicial decisions for adding and removing landmarks and stuff like that. And I can go through that. So that's where you're at. And one of the things I was kind of concerned about when I was reading through your duties that you came up with is that it doesn't include your duties as a CLG. And if you're going to list them, I mean, I do think they need to be listed, and we need to pull them out and list them so you know what your duties are as a CLG and what you need to do for to respond to the state. But then also your duties that were subsumed into Chapter 25. Chapter 25 has a purpose statement. It has seven purposes in it, and although you don't legislate on the purposes, that does speak to your duties. That I don't know that that you had a chance to look at it or incorporate into your list of duties that that John came up with in the memo of October 20th. So what I'm getting at is I think that we need to think a little more about your role, what you've put down as a role. And the role really is duties, but I don't know, you kind of have to get me up to speed as to how, do you want to list your duties, or do you just want to speak very generically of your role? Anyway, does anyone want to talk about what they've done up to now?
Well, you and I talked at the counter last week, and there's a lot of things in that document that aren't pertinent to what we do or need in a document like that.
Right.
Mission statements in general usually are fluff and feel good about what this group is going to do or what our purpose is. But as I stated a couple of months ago, we have a lot of new people in this group on the Historic Review Board that it wouldn't hurt my feelings if it listed out what our duties are, what we're tasked to do. Because that way, when we go into meetings, approving of buildings or bringing, historic resources on board, we know that's part of our job and that's what we're doing, right? So that's an easy, generic way of saying both. Having a mission statement that also lists our duties.
So
that's my opinion, and there's other people in the room, so.
I would sort of think that the mission statement is separate from our purpose or duties.
right.
The mission statement is more brief. Duties gets down to the real nuts and bolts
Yeah. So
of our responsibilities.
a purpose statement usually asks, why do you exist? What the big picture is, and the mission statement usually asks what you do, what are your objectives, what are your, kind of like, and it's a feel, like James says, it's a feel good, just
It's more of an overarching statement.
setting the
Yeah.
your
Maintain the historical integrity of the city of Westlake.
Yeah.
Something like that.
Yeah.
That would be the mission statement in my mind. And there was a list that we did briefly go over, goals.
Yes.
And I'm new to this board, so for me, coming in, I was thinking, a lot of this is a little bit vague,
Yeah,
but maybe intentionally so. But
I think it was left vague just because, in all honesty, and I agree that if we had a mission statement that was the fluff and the goodness and this is what we're going to do, then behind that, like you said, or Kristen said, have the rules and job roles and responsibilities of this board that we can work towards to fulfill that mission.
exactly.
They don't have to be on the same document.
So one of the things I'm not sure how John was, how he's envisioning this coming about, like by resolution, by a motion of the council, or maybe even by an ordinance. I wasn't quite sure how this was intended to be formalized. But a couple of these, like the membership and the meeting rules, and like I was telling James the other last week, and like the annual report, those things are already in the municipal code. We don't need to redo them.
Agreed.
If this is just a working document for us, it's kind of nice to have it all in front of us. But if this is something we're proposing that the city council take action on, it doesn't, we can't recodify what's already in the municipal code, so those are probably better taken out. But I don't know if that was just for for instructions, or if it was actually part of what you want to take to the city council.
I think my opinion or my view is what we take to the city council is that overarching, this is what we're going to do for the city.
Okay.
And then for us, like you said, there's codes and there's rules and there's regulations that we have to follow to do that. And that's what I want everybody on the board to understand, what we do. As Brad said, he's very new to the board, and there's, some others that are new to the board that we want to, teach and have them learn and grow. But overall, we're doing this overarching, mission.
Okay. Yeah, go ahead, Jody.
I actually think it might be worth the discussion also with SHPO, the State Historic Preservation Office. Their expectation is in terms of where those duties are outlined. Whether it's just a working document for the group or if it's actually embedded somewhere in code. I don't remember, but I know that when we became a certified local government, they gave us some very specific directions on how to do that. And we needed to meet certain things to become a certified local government. And, we're a state historic, we're a state heritage area, and we have a national list. We have multiple historic districts and properties. So it's important to check with them and see if there's a requirement as to where those duties are listed. And I don't remember. Do you, Jim?
I do think it does need to be in an enabling clause of establishing the landmark commission, from what I was reading. But when I was reading that, it wasn't clear. And so I did actually send out an email to the state SHPO to ask for clarification on this.
Oh, thank you.
And she hasn't got back to me. That's why I was hoping to have this all, in a nice bow for you guys today, but I just didn't have enough of it coming in to create something that is, just a really good, straightforward approach. But in addition to going to SHPO, we actually need to kind of vet this through our city attorney to understand if we're conflicting with other, how the impact on other municipal codes and other statutes and things like that. I mean, not so much the mission statement, but if we actually create a list of duties, we want to make sure that we're not, overstepping another CAG's duty or something like that. So I guess what I'm trying to say is I think that we might need to take a step back and regroup and before we can move forward. And we do have some time because the joint meeting we have with the city council is now scheduled for December 16th because they don't have availability in November. So, however.
That could be good news for us then, because it sounds like we may not be.
Okay.
Without the attorney and without SHPO and without having to step on anybody's toes, right? Because
Yes.
I don't want to say it, but that's more the fluff piece, right? Of what we are going to do for the city. Then the meat and potatoes of that is those rules and regulations of what the attorney will tell us and SHPO will tell us and what our code currently tells us, so.
So it's almost like you have to have a draft mission statement, a draft purpose, potentially purpose statement, roles, responsibilities of the board, and then run it by these other bodies like SHPO, right?
Well, what we could do is get the draft mission statement, which is, kind of the set the tone and the idealize what we want to do. And we go to the city council and discuss that. And if they agree with that, then they can send us back to create, basically draft the duties. And that's when I think we got to SHPO and get the city attorney to review. But then it might be appropriate to actually, shop it around to other CAGs, like find out what the Parks Board, because I think there's been some kind of, like what does the Parks Board do? What does the HRB do? And it might be good to kind of, get some clarification, maybe shop it, get some perspective from some of the outside groups of what we should be doing. So maybe have some sort of work session with these groups to discuss that. I don't know what you guys think about that.
So Lynn, how many of these other groups have a mission statement and roles and responsibilities?
Well, none. I mean, like none of the CAGs do have, they don't have roles and responsibility. Well, the CCI does, but the CCI, the Committee for Citizen Engagement, is not, it doesn't really overlap with the HRB. But the Parks Board, they're the owners. The Park Board represents the Parks Department, which is the owners of a lot of the facilities that we're overseeing. So then, the national, the states, the facilities that the city owns that are on the national register, like Historic City Hall and McLean House, and then the historic district. Well, not the historic district, but things like when we were talking about the what we should do about the monument. It was kind of like, well, where, how do we facilitate protecting that monument if it's not something we have, we have no place to put it.
Yeah, I get that. So if they don't have anything, I don't know if that's going to them and meeting to find out.
Okay, all right.
What's inside of their rules would be helpful at this point.
Okay.
But I don't think that stops us from creating an overarching, this is our mission, that we can show to council, and then, no matter what we do after that, our roles and responsibilities are to support that mission.
Okay.
And is that something that we could just put on ourselves and just say we are going to establish our own roles and responsibilities, or does that need to be approved?
I would need to.
I don't think we're going to establish our own roles and responsibilities. We're going to define what they already are. From SHPO and from city code and things like that. We're not going to make up any new roles and responsibilities because there's enough of them out there to guide us to doing the right thing for the historic resources of the city. It's just more for us as a group to say, this is how we're gonna get to this point.
Say something?
James, we have a member of the public who'd like to say something?
Yes, definitely, definitely.
I would suggest that you know more about this than the city council's gonna know or anybody
Yes.
else in the city. So you need to take the bull by the horns and put something together insofar as it relates to a mission statement. It will need to be reviewed and probably approved at some level. I would suggest you take the initiative, put it together to start with, so you know they'll know where you're coming from. If it's all wet, they'll tell you, but you're gonna know more about it to start with than anybody else in the city. The other thing you might do if you haven't, and you probably have, is West Linn is not the only HRB around that has responsibilities with. You might look at, for example, Waco and a few other cities, material as far as missions are concerned, and that sort of. I mean, for me, if I don't have to recreate the wheel, or at least if I can look at somebody else's suggestions, it helps. So that's it.
Right, thank you, John. We have looked at some other cities, Lake Oswego, Sisters, Klamath Falls, I think is what we looked at. I do agree that we should not reinvent the wheel. And that's kind of where we were starting, and then John came up with this other document that had more of some of our roles and responsibilities attached to it, and then that's when Lynn and I were talking about, we don't really know if those should be in the mission statement or not, so.
I also think though, we have a mission statement, there's missions and tactics, right? So what are those important things that get us to delivering against that mission statement? And it could be being more active about what are those prized jewels we have in the community that we haven't tapped into, to your point earlier. And as an example of maybe that double click on the mission statement. So I guess I'm just curious as to how that comes to life, right? Beyond just an overarching statement that you can write in one sentence.
If the HRB had a mission statement in 2007 or 2010, but then we got rid of it because we weren't supposed to have one anymore, I'd be curious to see what that mission statement was.
Well, it was more of a duties, a list of duties. And so that's where, so when I read what John's memo, you have a purpose statement, which isn't the same to me as a mission statement. And then you have rules, which really said to me duties, but maybe I just didn't understand what so those were the two things I was looking at. And I was like, well, where did these rules come from? I wasn't quite sure where they came from, but I think he got them from other jurisdictions and as a starting point for discussion for you guys. And then put some other things in there. But that's where I was concerned that we had these roles that we were going to do that weren't connected to the statutes that we had, the CLG requirements and the chapter 25, that they were not the same as what we were legally required to do. So I'm like, well, how is this going to be different than what we're legally required to do? And I thought it would just get confusing. So I kind of was like, okay, well, I thought we were talking about a mission statement, and I agree with James. I think we should draft something and bring that to the city council and talk about a mission statement, and then after that, maybe develop the duties, clarify the duties. I don't know. How does that sound to people?
I think starting with a mission statement is what we want.
Okay.
Makes sense.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, it's the simple one.
Yeah. So
and then build on it.
So there was not a mission statement in ordinance 1537, just duties. But like I said at the beginning, the purpose statement in chapter 25, I think could be used to create the mission statement. And I'm sorry I didn't give people a copy of that because I just wasn't ready to have a conversation. But how would you like me to go about drafting something for you guys to look at? Or do you want to bring your own drafts and we can all, I mean, how do you want to do that?
So we'd gotten some progress on the mission statement with Chuck, haven't we? I mean, we reviewed it, I think, in August and added and subtracted from it in September.
Well,
That was more of the purpose statement than a mission statement.
purpose statement. So that's where I'm clear. That's what I'm trying to say is, are you trying to get a purpose statement? Do you want to move forward with just this purpose statement, which is in the memo I handed out to you? Or do you want to?
And it's the memo dated September 10th?
Yeah. The memo dated, September 10th. Has a purpose statement in it. And I wanted to know, is that what you mean by mission statement? Or do you want the mission statement to be, more aspirational and,
I think it needs to be more aspirational, like Brad was saying earlier, of our overarching what we're going to do for the city.
I don't think it is. This
oh,
is it
here, I printed out.
This is the one I grabbed right there. Well, it's today.
This was the one that he had for the last meeting that there was no quorum. And if you look on page 3 at the top is the mission is a purpose. It's a purpose. And you did wordsmith that in August.
I thought we worked on the mission statement too, though.
Okay, okay, that if you did, I didn't see what was the mission statement. I didn't see any documentation of a mission statement. And I apologize, but the August 20th memo didn't have a mission statement. Did you just kind of draft something in the meeting?
He's got August 10. You had August 10 as well ago.
August 20th.
August 20th. and then
Oh,
September.
yeah, there is a mission statement on that.
There is?
Oh,
No, that was just discussion around the development of the mission statement.
I just remember discussion about a mission statement. I don't remember a lot of discussion about a purpose statement, but maybe I'm misremembering it.
Well, I think
So I think you're not remembering it correctly, because we talked about the mission statements from those other cities, and we talked about what we thought ours would look like. But then the document that John came up with was more of a purpose statement than what we talked about as the mission statement.
right. I think that's the disconnect.
Yeah. Because we had talked about kind of what we'd like it to look like, and then he was going to go back and write that. But then he came back with the purpose statement instead of the mission statement. The one that was sent out for September 10th isn't what we talked about in August.
And here's where, that's why I have to apologize that I wasn't following along with John, when he was doing this. So I don't, but I guess my question is, should we regroup to a mission statement here? Work on something, bring it to you in November to wordsmith, and that you would present to the city council in December.
I would say yes. From my
I think it's always nice to have a starting point, so if one of us was to draft something,
Mhm.
just work from there. I mean, I think about the roles, kind of to your point, feed into what that looks like, what are we responsible for, what are we trying to do? And then having just a really pithy, short statement that says, this is our mission, right? And then below that, you have our responsibility. Here's our purpose and our responsibilities.
Right.
And that we can refine later, but you have a little bit of understanding of that when you go in to support the mission statement from the city council.
Okay. Do you
Does
want,
it make sense, James?
Yeah, that does. Is the proposal that each one of us drafts something up and then we compile and kind of go over good ideas, or one person works with Lynn on this, or what do you think, Brad? What?
John Steele has his hand up.
Okay, John, sorry.
My 2 cents, I don't disagree with anything being said, but at least if you look at large corporations, my familiarity with mission statements is from the United States Air Force, which is a big organization. But other big companies, missions, at least to me, mission statement's one sentence. Our mission is to whatever, it's one sentence. Purpose may be like a bullet list underneath that. But here's the mission, here's our purpose, and there may be several purposes, however we want to do it. So at least my 2 cents is a mission, at a minimum, mission statement, or at a maximum, mission statement's one sentence. Here's why we exist, one sentence. Now, to accomplish that, sure, we may have more, but again, it's like a bullet point. Maybe we have 4 or 5 single sentences that illuminate, okay, here's how we intend to achieve that mission. We'll go from there.
And it could just be something simple, right? Preserve and maintain the historical resource of West Linn, and maybe add some verbiage around identifying historic resources and moving forward with, historic designation. I don't know, but have it be more than just preserve, but also something more action.
You're 100% on the right track. That statement could be made into our mission statement. We want to preserve historic resources while, looking, as Jody said, we want to do inventory of other buildings and other resources that aren't protected at this point. So between those two things, we want to look for new and we want to protect what we already have. That's kind of the mission.
Yeah, and you could do that with a comma, right? Preserve, maintain, and identify.
Yeah.
There you go.
Because I say this a lot, Jody. Jody has a great point. If we want a grant to help do these inventories, and then we want the city to help us either staff it or give us some more money or resource it in some aspect, we can always point to that, that mission statement on the wall saying, this is why we're doing it. And they would have a hard time arguing with why they can't support us.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I can draft something up like that and have it available for the November meeting, and you guys can wordsmith it.
I think that would be, yes, I like that.
I would say late next week, please, because if we wait until the November meeting, the next meeting is in front of council, right? So we need to look at it throughout the rest of this month, and then on the November meeting, approve and say, yes, this is what we're going to present.
Okay. Does that work? If I get something a memo to you next week that that you think about it and be ready to,
Maybe we take that as homework. So
Yeah.
everybody on the team comes back with their feedback. You draft it just to get something out there.
Mhm.
And then I feel like if we were just to roll up our sleeves, put something on the wall, and then go from there. I don't think it's I think it's an hour we could probably knock it out.
yeah.
And it's just a few words that you want to make sure you get in there, right?
Right.
I don't disagree with you at all, Brad, but if we all get back in a room, then it's a public meeting also, and there's rules for that.
Got it.
So
I
if
think
we,
the homework, say,
yeah, if you took some homework home and then wordsmith it and do it over emails and things like that, or, that's a little bit easier than to get everybody in the room and have a meeting. So,
right, so then just getting prep for the next meeting, we all have reviewed it, given feedback. Lynn comes with whatever she comes together with, and then we have something we can just wordsmith in a half an hour.
yes, perfect.
Our next meeting.
Yep, yep.
I feel like we've already done this, but I guess we'll do it again. I mean,
I wasn't here in the September meeting, I was in it.
Yeah, but I mean, wasn't it June or August? I mean, I have highlighted things that I took, including mission statement.
So,
Yeah, it was the August meeting. And we kind of discussed what we'd like to see, and then we discussed some other cities' mission statements for their HRBs, and then we walked away from that and had a different letter drafted.
well, yeah, and that's where I don't understand, because I do remember we did have the discussion about mission statements, but then this memo that John gave to you on September had a purpose statement. And I don't know that that was what you wanted. Is the purpose your mission? I mean, and what he came up with for, for September 17th was the purpose of the HRB is to advise the city council on matters pertaining to the built environment, historic resources, buildings, places, and archaeological monuments within the community, and to advise the city council, the city staff and city council on the administration of certified government, and to serve as an advisory and decision-making body for the, as part of the city's historic resource program. I mean, that could actually, you could actually say that's the mission, but, I guess what I needed, oh, go ahead, John. I mean, yeah, John Steele. Yeah.
Yeah, I would argue that's not the mission.
Okay.
That's a list of here are things we are doing or planning.
It's a part of the mission.
That's not a mission statement. That's an implementation. Maybe you could argue that's a purpose. I would argue that's not even a mission. That's actual implementation issues.
Yeah.
That's not my mission.
I get back to missions and tactics, right? The mission is really, this is what we want to see come to life.
For example, just because I brought it up here, Apple Corporation is to provide the best user experience for customers through its products, services, and software. Then they go on and define lots of other stuff, but the mission statement is that one sentence. I mean, one of the largest corporations in the world, that's, and I think, and again, just to reiterate, mission is, why do we even exist? We exist to preserve the heritage, or however we want to say it, of West Linn. To me, okay, that says why we exist. Now, identifying, et cetera, that's how we're implementing. These are the things we need to do to accomplish that mission,
But
preserve.
exactly, and I think that the mission starts our discussion of what those things are that we need to do. And it's not like we're reinventing the wheel. This group has done this for decades, right? So it's not like that's all brand new, and we kind of know. We may discover, and when we're thinking about the mission statement, there's things we need to add to that, or there's things that are on that list of things that we're doing that maybe don't really, the juice isn't worth the squeeze or whatever. But to me, starting with the mission statement, everything else cascades down for that. And I bet you anything, if we agree on a mission statement, then go right to the purpose, and we're like, oh, this all makes sense. It's important, but we can also get more specific, you know, where we think it makes sense. So I think we all kind of agree.
Yeah, I
that-
think you agree. I mean, at this point, we don't have a mission statement, even though we may have discussed it at earlier meetings. We don't have a mission statement, so we actually have to.
We'll create it, yeah.
Yeah, so we need to draft it.
So maybe just send something out to the board. Everybody comes back with their list of edits, or even a rewriting of it, and we just go back and forth.
Agreed.
Imagine the public meetings law.
Yeah.
So my suggestion would be, you don't want a forum. Otherwise, you've got to include everybody in the world
Oh,
to take part. So I think your most efficient way would be to have your staff work up something and then work with two of them. Perfectly okay under the law. Until you come up with something that the three of you are satisfied with to bring to the full board. That would be my suggestion.
or we could draft something right now. And then start a discussion of that.
Well, you already said it, didn't you?
I don't think I can do it again.
It's recorded, so luckily it's there.
It is recorded, so we could actually just write it up and have it, what you said before, we could write up and have ready for the next meeting.
Okay, I'm just gonna quickly.
I had mentioned before from Appendix B that each property shall be recognized as a physical record of its time, place, and use. I just sort of felt like that was sort of key in our mission statement. But that's what we're tasked with protecting. The Secretary of the Interior standards for rehabilitation.
That was Appendix B on the 20th.
No, it's from for protecting historical properties from the National Park Service. Appendix B, Secretary of the Interior Standards for Rehabilitation. And that's just something I brought to one of our meetings.
Right.
Okay, I'll just spitball here. So the mission of the Westland Historical Review Board is to identify, preserve, and maintain the historical integrity of community historic resources.
Sounds good to me. I think.
Did it address your time?
Love
place?
it.
Go ahead, Sharon.
We need the elevator answer. You get on the elevator, somebody pushes the 10th floor, you push the 20th floor, they say, oh, what boards or commissions are you on? And by the time you get to the 10th floor, you've completely answered their question. I like that last statement. I preserve the integrity of historical.
Oh, let me read it one more time.
Yeah,
Mission of the West Linn Historic Review Board is to identify, preserve, and maintain the historical integrity. Yes.
Did you incorporate, here's
It does, because it also says identify.
time, place, and what was the other thing? Time, place, and
Each property shall be recognized as a physical record of its time, place, and use.
But I think that's,
identified.
Could you read it one more time so I can write it down?
and this could be worded here, but we could simplify. The mission of the West Linn Historic Review Board is to identify, preserve, and maintain the historical integrity of West Linn community historic resources. And I think what we want to kind of wordsmith is kind of what we say we're doing, right? So it's identify, that's the thing, right? Then that means you're being more proactive in saying, we have these resources we haven't even thought about. You have preserve, which is, it's code enforcement, et cetera. And maintain also falls in that. And those really speak to in my mind, the things that.
Yeah, I like that.
So the purpose statement, talks about, we could maybe the historic resources that reflect special elements of the historic architectural, archaeological, artistic, cultural, and engineering heritage. If you wanted to add that.
Yeah.
If you wanted to add, the historic resources that reflect special elements of its historical, architectural, archaeological, artistic, cultural, and engineering heritage.
Seems like all.
it's not,
We want to, yeah, purpose.
Okay, all right.
I would say that's not a mission.
Okay, all right, you're right.
That's an implementation. Here's definitions of what we need.
Purpose. Okay, that's the
It's not a
purpose.
mission.
Okay,
Could Brad or Lynn send that his,
I'll put that in the minutes, the draft
I'm
minutes.
gonna write it down and.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I will put it in the minutes, so it'll become part of the minutes, and then we'll also use it as a discussion point at the November meeting. Okay, does that work?
Yeah, well, although I usually don't get the minutes for weeks, it'd be nice to start thinking about it.
Yeah, I'll try and get those out.
Okay.
Okay, Brad is writing it down for us. Thank you.
So if we move back to the agenda, this item 6 was joint meeting with council and chapter 58 exemption statement.
I'm sorry, I
We
can't.
covered that now.
Okay, so I think that James just talked about moving on to discussion item 6, the joint meeting with council / chapter 58. So I just wanted to let you know that it was rescheduled for December 6th.
I think you said 16th.
16.
Yeah, December 16th. If that's the Monday of that
Yes.
week, yeah. So December 16th, and we'll present this draft mission statement, but I think I want to know, you talked to John about chapter 58. Are there any other items you want to talk to them about at this meeting?
Well, one of the things with 58 was there's changes or addendums to 58 that I think we would like to make. But we need their approval to work on it.
So if you recall, you did try and do chapter 58. I don't know if you were on the board, James, a couple of years ago.
Yep.
And it was hard. It was a hard go.
It was a hard go, but if you look at the last couple projects we've had, we keep making exceptions to 58, which are now becoming precedent, that everybody is now looking at these exceptions instead of looking at what they can actually do in chapter 58. And if we don't approve somebody's exception, then they just take it to, planning commissioner or council, when we could make the ruling earlier in the process based off of how chapter 58 has evolved or could evolve,
So it is. So it sounds like it's something you want to have a discussion with the city council about.
Yeah, we don't have to have a resolution, but every year we're supposed to. This year we didn't do it, but every year in January during council of what is important to council for the year, they give tasks to different committees to work on things. And I think if we get this in front of them saying, we would like to work on 58, and they say, yes, you can do that, then that gives us some direction of things to do for the year versus just reacting to projects as they arrive.
Okay. Sounds like it's an opportunity to discuss the problems and brainstorm, and they can make a,
Yeah, they can say no, and I'm okay with that if they say no. But, if they say yes, that's something that, you guys can work on this year. Doesn't mean we're gonna change it this year. It means that they're, I don't know, in Christian one was a June, July timeframe, we talked about some issues that were on 58 that we wanted to address,
So that would be you requesting to put the chapter 58 review on the docket. And then then the city council would have put it on the docket, and then that would authorize the planning department to implement a code review of the chapter.
Well, I don't think we would have a code review authorization right off the bat. I think what we would do is say we would like to work on this, and then when they come back and say in January, this is what we'd like to task you with for the year, then that would be the point, I think. I think at this meeting with council, we just say, hey, this is our mission statement, and what do you think? And, they'll adopt or not adopt. And then the second half of that conversation is, us going forward in 2025, we thought that this project would be a good one to work on for 2025. We could also say, we want to do an inventory of historic resources in the city of West Linn, and we want to work on chapter 58, and we want to paint the other building blue, whatever we wanted to tell them. And it's up to them to say yay or nay,
Yeah. But what I hear you saying is you want to do a very specific change related to, you don't want to do a comprehensive change.
No. It'd be targeted based off of, in my opinion, this is just me, it'd be based off of the exceptions that we have given on projects over the last couple of years are now becoming precedent of what people are expecting. in there, you know, they're not following 58 because they say, you know what? We're gonna ask for this awning, or we're gonna ask for triple windows, or we're gonna ask for whatever, because they were approved in the past, you know? Things like brick facades. 58 doesn't allow them, but you know what? We put brick facades on a lot of buildings in town, you know?
Okay. All right, well, I will, in our, request, I mean, we'll put that on the request to, as part of the discussion with them at our joint meeting.
Okay.
With agreement. Everyone agree on that? John? Sherry, how do you feel? Are you in agreement?
Yeah, I do go back quite a ways and remember enormous amounts of effort in 58. And yeah, I think at this point, I don't think James is asking us to solve the problem. It's just, yeah, you guys can go back and look at that, because I believe I share his same, if all you're going to do is just override and say, do it anyway, you know, what's the purpose of historic review? What's the purpose of chapter 58? I totally agree. They just go around it. And, okay, there we are. Now that is precedent. So I don't know if that's a total answer, but yeah, I really agree with the idea. We have to go to them and say, we really think there is need to address these issues right now. 10 years from now, that list hopefully will be different. 5 years, I hope that list is different, but this is the list right now.
Yep.
Okay. Sherry, do you have any comments?
I have to agree that it seems worth at least the request for us to have the opportunity to review it, because exactly what John and James both said, if the precedent is to just override, you know, where they have set that precedent, then what's the reason of even having it, what's in it? So clearly there needs to be, it needs to be addressed.
Okay, thank you. And Brian and Kristen?
I definitely think it's worth making them aware that it's a problem that should be fixed, or we're going to keep having big problems.
Agree.
All right. Sounds good.
Can I go back to our purposes and mission statement thing before? I just thought I'd quickly mention in chapter 25, the very first thing that's on it is purposes, which might be redundant to our purposes. So I don't know that if we need a purposes in chapter 25 and a purposes for the HRB. I just thought I'd mention that we might not.
Right. How, the one comment I had on that was that the purposes in chapter 25 just relate to, they don't necessarily relate to the CLG responsibilities that are, that we need to fulfill, you know, our state responsibilities. These are just quasi judicial decisions, design reviews. So that might be, there's a gap there.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Are we ready to move on to the next?
I think we are. So potential CLG grant projects is the next item for discussion.
Well, so February 2025, the CLG grant should open February, March. And if we want to request money, we need to probably talk about some ideas of what we want, and we'll need to then prepare a grant application. So we need to put some things on the table, and I think a really good thing that Jody brought up might be something we might want to consider. But as you know, in the past, we've done historic register nominations. We've done the story map. We've given out grant funds to homeowners. And then some other ideas were historic context statements, but it's maybe more appropriate to kind of go, you know, do something more like the whole inventory.
Right. I think with what we just, talked about for the last hour-ish about our mission statement and how we're going to protect what we know and what we don't know, the inventory is super important.
Okay. So you would like us to submit a grant application to do a historic inventory of all of West Linn, including
Moore's Island include, I don't know if we could, honestly, if we could do all of West Linn. And, if we went down Willamette Falls Drive and then Willamette Drive, because, Highway 43 in the next couple of years is going to become, it's going to become a different road, right? And if there's some historic resources that we want to protect along that road, now is the time to identify. And also, as Jim said, with Moore's Island, if that mill continues to stay shut down and PGE wants to do something with that island, we want to make sure we know exactly what's down there,
So, go ahead.
And not just Moore's Island, but the surrounding areas.
Yes.
The Lock Museum and the administration building, there's all that. down there.
Exactly.
It's more than just the island, it's the,
Right. It's everything from the river to the Willamette Falls Drive,
right.
So that sounds like a pretty big inventory from the river to Highway 43, but
Well, no, not from the river to Highway 43, from Moore's Island to Willamette Falls Drive.
okay, so more of that, more of
Yeah.
the historical.
The mill properties and things that had to do with the mill,
There's-
What I'm talking about on 43 is, there's old train track right of ways, and there's plenty of old houses along 43 that we
yes.
don't want something to happen to those if the state decides to, widen the road by 40 feet or something,
So
Not
would, be two inventories?
Oh, sorry.
Would they be two inventories or one with different sections in it?
Well, I think it'd be one inventory with different sections would probably be the way you'd want to write a grant. Because if you wrote a grant for two inventories, they might only give you one of them,
Yeah,
It's really an update to your existing inventory.
okay,
Okay.
Because you have an inventory,
yes,
well, it's an update.
okay.
So when you write the grant,
Okay, all
you
right.
extend it to those areas.
Have we-
Focus.
Do we have the inventory? Have we seen the inventory, the current inventory?
It's on the, yeah,
Okay.
it's very 1980s.
And
Yeah.
and there was an update. It's not as comprehensive as should have been done.
Okay,
Right.
when was that done,
You know, Jim? We didn't do the update. James, do you remember what day it was?
Yeah, it's probably 8 years ago. Ish.
90 something.
90 something, I think.
No, you think it was that?
Maybe more recent than that.
No, there was one more recent than that, but as you said, it wasn't very good. It was more of a check the boxes of the current things. That's still there, where we want to identify new things in this one,
Right. It was a checkbox kind of.
Yeah, it was definitely a checkbox. It was the old inventory that somebody went and drove past them, basically.
Would a CLG grant possibly cover photographically documenting existing conditions for Morris Island? Because I have a feeling it's not gonna look like what it looks like for that much longer. And now seems like a good time to sort of really preserve it, at least photographically.
I don't, it could potentially be a CLG grant, but there's another grant, bucket, that, SHPO does, and that opens in August, and I forget the name of it, but it is more focused on preserving, histories, like oral histories and potentially photographic histories as well.
Yeah. But that's the point. Kristen has a great point, that you could walk through, or you could go through the mill pretty quickly with a GoPro and get a good visual of the condition of the buildings. Because, you know, thankfully, they just put a new roof on the mill, right? So it won't leak water anytime soon. But there's a lot of maintenance that has to happen to that building every day, or it's going to fall apart. And you know, we've seen plenty of buildings that have been demolished because of neglect, you know, versus making someone repair stuff that is falling down, you know. I think the current CLG grant should say, you know, for the inventory, you know, that we will video and take photographic evidence of new and existing structures, you know. That beats checking the box, because the check the box one was, yeah, it's still there, no, it's not still there. And that's part of the reason we lost Joseph Field's house, right? Joey?
Yes.
You
Yes.
know,
Why
it was there, but guess what? You couldn't go up the steps anymore, you know, it fell apart. So,
Jody, I think you had a comment.
I think, just to your concern about not having pictures or documentation, there is some limited documentation because PGE had to do for their FERC license, they had pictures and maps and an inventory of all the properties down in the mill and the island and the surrounding areas, but that was done in, when was the FERC license done? 20 years ago? No, not 20 years ago. Not 20 years, 15 years ago. So that document exists. I think it's still on the PGE's website. It's at the state. It's all those properties they listed were all designated as eligible. And we had Chico down there again in the last 5 years, because I was with them. And that's when they said it looked like it would still qualify to be a district. But I believe there's pictures in that. There's maps and the buildings identified. Now, 2 of the buildings have been since demolished. So time is of the essence, like you said. But I believe as part of the inventory, they would do pictures. But I think there is some record of what was there and is going away quickly.
And are they like high quality pictures? Like, I mean, there's pictures, like I took pictures when I was with it, and then there's high quality pictures that, you know, in 100 years could be in an exhibit or something like that.
I don't know, in terms of the 106 process, they had to do pretty high quality pictures of Mill A before they took it down. And they had to do high quality pictures of the Locks Museum and some of the properties related to the locks, but I would have to look at that inventory again. I think I have a copy somewhere, but the city should have a copy of the inventory as well, and if you don't, PGE should supply it. But
right.
through the,
Actually, I think those photos are part of the FERC license, like you said, the original ones. But about 5 years ago, they had to take more photos. When did they do the bladder? When they added all that cement to the top of the falls? They had to do it then also, because that changed the FERC license, the FERC permit.
right, that's right, that was an update to the FERC license. and they have.
Yeah, because the original one was probably 20 years ago, but 5 years ago, maybe, they had to update that license.
I think that those bladders were put in longer ago than 5 years, because, you know, they were there.
They're having fun, huh?
Yeah, because I was doing tours of the mill trying to preserve Mill A at that point in time, and that was more than 5 years ago. Probably
Yeah.
6 years ago. It was probably 6 or 7 years ago.
Okay, but those things should be with the FERC license, though, if they don't give them to us.
Federal Energy,
Regulatory Commission.
thank you.
Good.
And they have to go through that licensing process because of there being a electrical generating station, and they get federal funding, and that's why they have to go through a 106 process. And the same thing for lots.
So I guess on CLG, my recommendation, again, only my recommendation is to do inventory of all historic resources along Willamette Falls Drive and Highway 43, and Willamette Falls Drive down, to the mill. So,
Okay. I will do some research on that and see, and start looking at the grant application.
Okay. Thank you. All right, the next item for discussion is any items of interest from the board members? I don't hear any, I don't see any hands. So the next item of interest is from staff. Lynn, do you have anything for us additional?
Yes, the 2024 CLG workshop is being held on November 6th in the Dalles. It says Dallas. Oh my gosh, Dallas?
That's what lives in the house.
Yeah.
Dallas, Texas? No.
No, that was Oregon.
Oh, you're right. Okay, Dallas. I'm sorry. Yes, I was assuming the Dallas, but no, it is the Dallas. It is the city of Dallas. Anyway, they have, they're talking about replacement windows, which I think has been an issue in the past, and independence, window preservation and design assistance. They have a downtown tour and a retail storefront design for quality and historic character. So I don't know if anyone's interested in attending that. I have a I know I have it here somewhere. How do we sign up? Well, you go to the Oregon Heritage site and you sign up for your attendance. I just saw this on the front page and I thought I'd send it to you guys. I'll send a copy to you. I'll email the link to register to everyone as a follow-up to this.
All right. Thank you.
Where Dallas is, I think it's also about the same distance as the Dallas.
Dallas is right outside Salem.
Okay.
It's like right.
Even
Dallas, Independence, Rickley, all that little area.
even closer to Dallas.
Yeah.
Okay.
Close.